The engine is off, but the silence is far from empty. It is a thick, pressurized atmosphere that pushes against your eardrums until you can hear the frantic rhythm of your own heart. You are sitting in your car in the suffocating darkness of an underground parking lot, and the dashboard lights have just faded into an indifferent, cold blackness. Above you, through layers of reinforced concrete and the muffled hum of a world that never stops consuming, is a life you spent 12 years constructing with the precision of a watchmaker. There is a wife who expects a curated, polished version of your soul to walk through the door. There are children who need a hero who never shows a single crack in his armor. There is a mortgage that requires you to be a perpetual motion machine with no internal off switch. But here, in this cramped driver seat for these 15 minutes, you are finally no one to no one. This is the only place left on this entire planet where you are not being harvested for your utility, your energy, or your financial output. You look at your hands on the steering wheel, illuminated only by a distant, flickering sodium bulb, and you realize they have been trembling for 3 years without you ever consciously noticing it. This is the driveway sanctuary. It is the tactical retreat of a man who is not lazy or unloving, but a man who is slowly being erased by the very structure that was promised to give him purpose. Why is it that the simple walk from the car door to the front door of your own home feels like a long, agonizing march toward a high-security prison? Why does the sound of your own key turning in the lock trigger a violent shot of cortisol that feels like a physical blow to the center of your chest? You are not alone in this garage. Thousands of men are sitting in their cars right now, staring at the same stained concrete walls, because the silence of a cold engine is more comforting than the noise of a warm home. We have been conditioned to believe that marriage is a finish line, the ultimate reward for our labor and our absolute loyalty. But if marriage is a harbor, why are so many men choosing to stay out in the dark, cold water, miles away from the dock? We are witnessing a silent quitting of the human spirit. The modern man has performed a cold, clinical analysis of the contract and realized that the only way to win a game that has been rigged against him from the start is to stay in the driveway for as long as possible. The silence is not a void. It is the final fortress of a man who has nothing else left to call his own. He is reclaiming his identity 1 minute at a time before he has to put the mask back on and walk into the house. This 15-minute window is more precious than an 8-hour sleep or a week of vacation. It is the last shred of absolute freedom in a life defined by an endless series of obligations that no longer offer a return on investment. The world likes to call it stonewalling. When you sit at the heavy oak dinner table and the accusations start flying about the chores you forgot or the emotional connection you are supposedly failing to provide, you simply shut down. Your brain enters a state of clinical preservation. You stare at your plate, counting the grains of rice as if they are the only things in the universe that make sense. Your voice becomes flat, mechanical, and devoid of any emotional color. You offer one-word answers, like a prisoner of war, giving only his name and serial number to the enemy. To the outside observer who does not understand the hidden mechanics of the male mind, you are being distant or cold or unfeeling. But through a surgical lens, we see something much more profound and desperate. You are building a wall not to hurt the person across from you, but to protect the last 5% of your identity that has not yet been turned into a commodity for consumption. This is the abyss of the high-risk contract. When a man enters a marriage in the modern era, he is signing a legal document where the terms can be changed at any time by the other party without his consent or even his knowledge. This is a systemic risk that our culture refuses to name. Consider the data from men like the case of the father who spent 15 years building a career and a family only to lose $200,000 and the fundamental right to see his own flesh and blood in a single afternoon. This is not just a sad story for a late-night talk show. It is a predictable and systemic outcome of a structure that treats male effort as a natural resource to be extracted and then discarded when the well runs dry. When the price of commitment is the total and permanent destruction of the self, the brain triggers a biological emergency exit. This silent quitting is not a loud protest with signs and shouting. It is a quiet, microscopic evaporation of belief. It is the realization that you have been paying a high premium for a product that was designed to fail in your hands. You are no longer fighting to be heard because you have realized that the person across from you is not listening to the man. They are listening to the utility you provide. They are listening to the security you offer. They are not listening to the human being who is slowly suffocating inside the suit of responsibilities. Your silence is the only boundary you have left that they cannot cross. It is the ultimate refusal to participate in a negotiation where you have no leverage. You are not ignoring her. You are protecting the silence, because the silence is the only thing that belongs to you. Let us dissect this phenomenon through the 5 lenses of behavioral science to understand the true depth of the abyss. First, we look through the lens of evolutionary biology. For 10,000 years, the male instinct was to protect and provide in exchange for legacy and a deep, foundational respect within the tribe. It was a fair trade that ensured the survival of the species and the stability of the family. But in the modern era, the rules have been rewritten by a culture that demands the protection but mocks the protector at every turn. The biological contract has been breached by a society that views masculine strength as a threat while simultaneously demanding it as a service. Second, we look through the lens of the subconscious mind and the ancient need for the cave. Every man has a primal need for a space where he is not a performer, a space where he does not have to justify his existence. When the home is transformed into a stage where he must act out the role of the perfect husband, the perfect father, and the perfect earner, he loses his last sanctuary. His subconscious perceives this as an invasion of his most basic survival space. Third, we see social exploitation. Marriage has been weaponized as a tool for emotional and financial consumption. The media feeds a constant, toxic narrative of the bumbling, incompetent father and the hyper-competent, long-suffering mother, which creates a baseline of disrespect before a man even opens his mouth to speak. You have been turned into an emotional credit card with a high limit but zero owner rights. Fourth, look at the lens of science and the dopamine win state. A man needs a sense of agency and victory to maintain healthy levels of testosterone and mental clarity. In a marriage where every move is criticized and every massive effort is met with a new, more demanding list of expectations, the win state is removed entirely. You are in a permanent state of losing in your own living room. Science proves that this level of chronic, invisible stress leads to a physical thinning of the prefrontal cortex. You are literally losing your ability to think clearly because the environment you live in is a low-level war zone of passive aggression and chronic disappointment. Finally, we look at the Stoic cure. Stoicism teaches us to only concern ourselves with what we can truly control. The modern man has looked at the legal system, the social stigma, and the emotional labor, and he has realized that he controls nothing in that entire system. Therefore, the only logical and stoic response is to withdraw his energy and his expectations. This is not hatred or bitterness. It is a cold, surgical removal of the self from a toxic ecosystem that no longer serves the human spirit. The silence is not a lack of love. It is the total exhaustion of a faith that was never reciprocated by the system. He is choosing peace over chaos, and he is choosing himself over a role that requires his total annihilation. The scientific evidence is no longer a matter of opinion or anecdotal stories. It is a matter of cold, hard survival data that can be measured in a lab. According to the Pew Research data from 2024, 63% of men under the age of 30 are now choosing to remain single and unattached. They are opting out of the traditional dating and marriage market in numbers that have never been seen in the history of human civilization. This is not a coincidence or a passing trend. This is a massive, global application of game theory. In any game, if the rules are constantly changing to favor one side and the cost of losing is the total bankruptcy of the heart, the mind, and the bank account, the only smart move for the rational player is to walk away from the table. The only way to win a rigged game is to not play it at all. These young men have watched their fathers and their uncles get stripped for parts in a legal system that treats male effort as a public resource to to be divided by strangers. They are performing a clinical economic calculation for the survival of their own souls. We also see this in the neurological data regarding stress hormones. Men in high conflict or low appreciation marriages show cortisol levels that are identical to soldiers during active combat in a jungle. The human body does not distinguish between a physical mortar shell and a passive-aggressive comment about your salary or your worth. Both are interpreted by the nervous system as direct threats to your survival. Science shows us that men are quietly performing a cost-benefit analysis every single day. They are realizing that the peace of a small, quiet, and lonely apartment is worth infinitely more than the status and social approval of a large, chaotic house filled with resentment. They are choosing a life where they can breathe without being judged for the depth of their inhalation. This is a quiet revolution of self-preservation. They are not quitting on women. They are quitting on a system that refuses to see them as human beings with intrinsic value outside of what they can provide for others. They are choosing to be whole as individuals rather than broken as providers. They are realizing that their survival depends on their ability to say no to a contract that only offers them a seat at a table where they are the main course. Social exploitation has become the invisible, suffocating tax on the male soul in the 21st century. We live in a world where media and social platforms have weaponized empathy, using it as a surgical tool to extract more and more from men while giving less and less in return. The modern man is expected to have the grit and physical endurance of a 1950s coal miner, while simultaneously maintaining the emotional sensitivity and communication skills of a 2024 licensed therapist. He is expected to be a ruthless, cutthroat competitor in the office and a soft, submissive, and agreeable partner at home. These are mutually exclusive biological and psychological states. You are being asked to be two different species at the same time, and the friction of this contradiction is what is burning you out from the inside. The constant, unrelenting comparison, facilitated by social media, creates an environment of infinite and impossible expectation. No matter how much you provide, no matter how many hours you work, there is always someone on a glowing screen providing more, traveling further, and appearing happier. This creates a perpetual state of inadequacy in the male mind. You feel like a failure even when you are succeeding by every traditional metric. This is why you sit in the car, because in the car, no one is comparing your interior to a luxury yacht. In the car, no one is telling you that your silence is a form of violence or that your preferences are toxic. In the car, no one is demanding that you become someone else to satisfy a passing cultural trend. The silence in the garage is the only honest thing left in your fragmented world. It is the refusal to be the fuel for a social machine that only wants to burn you until you are nothing but cold ash. You are realizing that your loyalty is being used as a weapon against you. You are realizing that the more you give, the more is expected, until there is nothing left but a hollow shell. You are choosing to stop being a resource and start being a man again. You are reclaiming the right to exist for yourself, independent of the endless cycle of consumption and performance. You are no longer willing to be the raw material for someone else's life of luxury and social status. The surgical cure for this systemic collapse is not found in anger, in shouting, or in the destructive flames of a bridge burning. It is found in the cool, hard, and unshakable stone of the inner citadel. You must understand, with clinical certainty, that your value is not a variable that depends on the approval or the validation of a system or another person. Your value is a constant. The solution is the awakening of your own intrinsic value. You must stop asking for permission to have peace. You must stop apologizing for the fact that you have human limits and a deep need for silence. We are not calling for a mass exodus into bitter loneliness, but for a fundamental transformation into voluntary relationships. A relationship should be a choice made every single day by two sovereign individuals, not a legal or emotional hostage situation designed to extract resources. You must build your inner fortress where your self-worth is guarded by iron walls of stoic truth. To the men listening, you must learn to set boundaries that are as hard as stone and as non-negotiable as gravity. If the price of a relationship is the slow, agonizing death of your identity, then the price is far too high for any man to pay. To the women who see this growing silence in their partners, do not mistake it for laziness or lack of care. It is a desperate distress signal from a drowning man. It is the sound of a man who is suffocating under the weight of expectations and has no more air left to scream. He needs respect more than he needs your affection, because love without respect is just a form of soft possession. We must move toward a model of mutual appreciation and shared burden, or the silence will continue to grow until it swallows every home in the civilized world. You must reclaim your right to be a human being, not just a biological appliance for the comfort of others. The cure is the realization that you are enough, even when you are doing nothing, even when you are producing nothing for the world to consume. Your value is in your existence, not in your utility. The final epiphany arrives when the ticking of the cooling engine finally stops and you reach for the door handle. You step out onto the cold, hard concrete of the parking garage, and you take a deep, cleansing breath of that stale air. You are no longer afraid of the door at the top of the stairs, because you finally understand the hidden rules of the game you have been playing for so long. You look at that door leading to your life, and you ask yourself a clinical, soul-searching question that demands an honest answer. Are you walking into a home that you helped build to nourish your spirit and your family? Or are you walking back into a highly decorated prison with velvet curtains and invisible bars? The answer doesn't need to be shouted, it just needs to be honest. You are the sole architect of your own internal space. You can choose to be a resource for the consumption of others, or you can choose to be a man who owns himself. You can choose to stay in the driveway for the rest of your life, or you can walk inside with the quiet power of a man who knows he can walk away whenever the contract becomes a death sentence for his soul. The silence of the car stays with you like a suit of invisible armor. It is the reminder that you are a sovereign soul in a world that wants to own you. We want to hear about your silence tonight. Leave a comment below about those 15 minutes in the car, about the weight of the key in your hand, and about the peace you found in the darkness. Tell the others they are not alone in the garage. Tell them that the silence is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new kind of freedom that no one can take from you. The lab is closing for the night, but the clinical observation of your own life and your own freedom has only just begun. Go inside, but do not leave your soul behind in the driver's seat. Take it with you into the house. It is the only thing you truly own in this world. Protect it with everything you have. Remember that your silence is not a sign of defeat. It is the sound of your power returning to you.